Summary of Synectics model. Synectics is one of the reorganizing models, which helps us to see old ideas in new ways. It reorganizes neural networks, uses metaphoric thinking, such as similes, metaphors, personification, and oxymoron. Connects divergent concepts, such as the layers of the earth with a peach. The purpose of Synectics is to spark creativity and innovation, generate interest in a concept, and foster generative thinking. Our topic is soil horizons. Our subject is science. A little background. We're currently in the middle of a unit about agriculture, and we've studied research, soil components and properties, food webs, and agricultural products of North Dakota. You can see the demographics for my classroom makeup. I do have a fairly homogeneous group of students, though they're all diverse in their own ways. I have very high parent support, and it creates a really positive classroom environment. Our standard is 5.53, identifying how the components of soil influence the properties of soil. And we're focusing on the first part in this lab, and then that will help us as we move into the second part of the standard. Our learning objective for today is, after completing a lab on soil horizons by using a pudding parfait model, students will be able to explain the layers of soil and their components. We will discuss this as a class, and students will also complete reflective questions in their lab packet. The rationale. I chose Synectics mainly because it was the one I was least familiar with and wanted to try something new. I'm also trying to incorporate more fun, and it certainly looked fun. It will appeal to all multiple intelligences except musical. And I picked the Model 1 of Synectics because it is a little simpler, and since it's the first time doing this with students, it made sense to start there. You can see the materials we'll be needing. The setup, basically put them in table groups with a mixture of low, medium, and high ability so they can work together and encourage each other and have a good variety of ideas. We have already studied soil components and done several activities with soil, so they should have the background knowledge they need to be successful in this experience. There is no technology in this lab, but we have used technology such as virtual field trips and doing research in previous activities. So phase 1 of Synectics is identification of topic area. What old idea do I want students to see in a new and interesting way? I thought soil would be a great chance to do this because it's something fun and creative, and it will help them remember the layers and the components of soil, hopefully long after they would from simply memorizing it. We are going to complete the pudding parfaits in between this phase and phase 2. In phase 2, the direct analogy, we've created the metaphoric comparison between the item and the analog, or in our case, the soil horizon and the pudding parfait. So we would then discuss and list the characteristics of both items and chart that out on chart paper. And then we would also list how they are similar and chart that out as well. Phase 3, the personal analogy. This is the phase that I had the hardest time wrapping my head around. And so I think it would be helpful for me to model it for the students on another item and analog so that they can see what the process entails, but also not be tempted to copy my ideas. So I would model it with some other concept and then allow them to visualize the item and the analog, and then to verbalize and list things that they feel and experience in that visualization. Maybe thinking about how the soil would feel, or as different things intrude on it, or if it's wasted, or different things that they might feel as if they were the soil. And then we would discuss the commonality of ideas, and so students could see that they were on the right track with what they did in the experience. The next phase, phase 4, is the analog contrast. So we would go back to the chart we created with similarities and now be looking at the differences between the concept and the analog and discuss those differences, and then we'd have a good comparison and contrast of the two items. And I think it's important to note that you don't want to discount the imperfection of your analog, because no analogy is perfect. And noticing the differences can actually help show that the students are understanding the concept more fully if they can point out those differences. Phase 5, new analogy. Students will work in groups to come up with a new analogy for the conceptual item of the soil horizons. And then we could discuss the strengths and weaknesses of new analogies. This would be fairly challenging the first time, I think, but once they've done it, it would become easier and be interesting to see what they come up with. Phase 6, topic refocus. We would review the phases that we went through, and students would then respond in their journal, their lab journal, to show their understanding by answering reflective questions. And then they would turn that journal in at the end. So assessment, formative assessment would be ongoing through each of the phases by me listening to conversations, asking clarifying questions, and observing their participation. And then the lab packet that they turn in with all of their diagrams and all the steps along the way would be their summative grade. I didn't mention in each phase in the presentation the Bloom's taxonomy levels, but in the lesson plan, if you're interested, I put all of the different phases of Bloom's that they would move in and out of in these different phases. And they hit actually all of the phases for different amounts of time throughout the lab. My reflection was this lesson helped me to see that the really juicy part isn't the analogy itself, but all of the conversation, all of the thinking and charting about it and taking that to another level. So that is where their real creativity comes out, and their generative thinking, particularly in thinking of a new analogy. So I was really excited about this. I think it will work great in my classroom. We're going to try it next week, and I think it'll be a good experience, and I'm sure they will all have fun eating their pudding parfaits. There's a lot more detail in the lesson plan, so if you're interested, feel free to take a peek. Thank you.